All right, let's keep going with chapter 6. We may finish it today. Siddhartha is working for Kamaswami, but he doesn't value being a merchant very much. And Kamaswami kind of is trying to find some power over Siddhartha, but Siddhartha keeps evading this. Because Siddhartha doesn't really value being a merchant, he's trying it out. He's trying it out. He's playing at it. What he does value is his relationship with Kamala. Now, I don't know that I would call it one of love. I would call it more of a relationship of teacher and student, almost like he's playing at that, but he does value it as well. All right, so let's go into the next part. Merchant is Kamaswami. The merchant's attempts to convince Siddhartha that he was eating his bread. The merchant's attempts to convince Siddhartha that he, Siddhartha, was eating his, Kamaswami's bread were also in vain. What does in vain mean? All my love's in vain. That's in so many songs. It means that you did it and it was for no use. It didn't work. You know, if I start a business and I put so much effort into it and the business fails, all my work was in vain. Okay? So even convincing Kamaswami or convincing Siddhartha that, hey, Siddhartha, you're namakalal, you're eating my salt, you're eating my bread. Siddhartha, it didn't bother him. Siddhartha ate his own bread. Moreover, they all ate the bread of others, everyone's bread. This is what Siddhartha has told him. If you give it to me, someone gave that bread to you. You know, Siddhartha doesn't see himself as taking. Siddhartha was never concerned about Kamaswami's troubles, and Kamaswami had many troubles. This is a theme of Siddhartha, right? In some ways, it can be good. It's not for me to really judge, but I have to think like he doesn't seem to really care about anyone, at least from my viewpoint. Siddhartha was never concerned about Kamaswami's troubles, and Kamaswami had many troubles. If a transaction threatened to be unsuccessful, if a consignment of goods was lost, if a debtor appeared unable to pay, Kamaswami could never persuade his colleague, Siddhartha, that it served any purpose to utter troubled or angry words, to form wrinkles on the forehead like this. This is forming wrinkles on the forehead. See, I have wrinkles. And sleep badly. So Siddhartha, none of this bothers Siddhartha's sleep. When Kamaswami once reminded him that he had learned everything from him, Siddhartha replied, "Do not make such jokes." Wow, that's quite the thing to say to your boss, right? I have learned from you how much a basket of fish costs and how much interest one can claim for lending money. Interest is the money you make on top of lending money. So I'll lend you money, but you owe me 1% per week that you loan it. That 1% is interest. In Islam, this is haram. You cannot gain interest, but banks will gain fees. So that is your knowledge. But I did not learn how to think from you, my dear Kamaswami. It would be better if you learned that from me. So Siddhartha still sees himself as above Kamaswami. Remember, Siddhartha said a long time ago that he watched people and it's like they're children that stumble over themselves to please Siddhartha. Siddhartha has a kingly way of looking at life. I don't necessarily like it, but I'm learning some things from it. His, meaning Siddhartha, his heart was not indeed in business. His heart wasn't in business. We often say this, my heart's not in this work. It means I don't really feel invested in it, you know. His heart was not indeed in business. It was useful in order to bring him money for Kamala, and it brought him more than he really needed. Moreover, Siddhartha's sympathy and curiosity lay only with people whose work, troubles, pleasures, and follies were more unknown and remote from him than the moon. He feels he understands the moon more than the people around him. He's really fascinated by them, like an anthropologist. Although he found it so easy to speak to everyone, to live with everyone, to learn from everyone, he was very conscious of the fact that there was something which separated him from them, and this was due to the fact that he had been a samana. He saw people living in a childish or animal-like way, which he both loved and despised. He saw them toiling, this is where you work hard, saw them suffer and grow gray about things that to him did not seem worth the price for money, small pleasures, trivial honors. He saw them scold and hurt each other. He saw them lament over pains, at which the samana laughs, and suffer at deprivations, which a samana does not feel. They would suffer hunger, and the samana didn't care if they suffered hunger. He accepted all that people brought to him. The merchant who brought him linen for sale was welcome. The debtor who sought a loan was welcome. The beggar was welcome who stayed an hour telling him a story of his poverty, and who was yet not as poor as any samana. So he looks at this beggar, and he thinks the samanas have less than this beggar. He did not treat the rich foreign merchant differently from the servant who shaved him at the peddler's, from whom he bought bananas and let himself be robbed of small coins. If Kamaswami came to him and told him his troubles, or reproached him for a transaction, he listened curiously and attentively, was amazed at him, tried to understand him, conceded to him a little where it seemed necessary, and turned away from him to the next one who wanted him. So he doesn't take Kamaswami too seriously. He tries to keep the relationship up, but it doesn't matter that much to him. And many people came to him, many to trade with him, many to deceive him, many to listen to him, many to elicit his sympathy. This means to make him feel sorry for them, elicit his sympathy. Many to listen to his advice. He gave advice, he sympathized, he gave presents, he allowed himself to be cheated a little, and he occupied his thoughts with all this game and the passion with which all men play it. He's like an alien, right? Watching all this. As much as he had previously occupied his thoughts with the gods and Brahman. So just like he had learned the gods and Brahman, remember Atman at the beginning of this, we're so far from that, right? The same laser focus he had on those, he has the same on watching people and trying to understand them. At times he heard within him, I want to stop for a second. This is the idea of mindfulness. Mindfulness is where you focus on the present moment. Okay, you see it, they'll say you hold it lightly. You see the experience, but you don't hold on to it like I have to keep this experience. That is mindfulness. There's also something a little missing from it. So it's the power of mindfulness, but would you want to be like that all the time? What would your children think if you treated them like that? It's a little strange. At times, he heard within him a soft, gentle voice. Remember, he listens to his inner voice, which reminded him quietly, complained quietly, so that he could hardly hear it. Then he suddenly saw clearly that he was leading a strange life, that he was doing many things that were only a game, that he was quite cheerful and sometimes experienced pleasure, but that real life was flowing past him and did not touch him. We often feel this. We will do something for a couple of years and then we'll look at it and go, what have I been doing? This is what he's experiencing. Like a player who plays with his ball, he played with his business, with the people around him, watched them, derived amusement from them, took amusement from them. But with his heart, with his real nature, he was not there. His real self wandered elsewhere, far away, wandered on invisibly, and had nothing to do with his real life, his real self. Now we're back to his real self. Remember? He did away with the real self. Or no, he's seeking the real self, but he's not seeking Atman, right? But he is listening to the inner voice, and the inner voice is from himself. His real self is elsewhere. It's separate from these things. His real self wandered elsewhere, far away, wandered on invisibly, and had nothing to do with his life. His real self didn't have anything to do with his merchant life. He was sometimes afraid of these thoughts, and wished that he could also share their childish daily affairs with intensity, meaning the people's. He sometimes was afraid of his own thoughts, and he wished that he could be like the people that he saw, their childish daily affairs and intensity. Truly take part in them, to enjoy and live their lives instead of only being there as an onlooker. He visited the beautiful Kamala regularly, learned the art of love, in which, more than anything else, giving and taking became one. It's quite interesting. He talked to her, learned from her, gave her advice, received advice. She understood him better than Govinda had once done. She was more like him. But what is she? She's a courtesan. Who does she love? It's unclear if she loves anyone, and he's the same. Once he said to her, "You are like me. You are different from other people. You are Kamala and no one else, and within you there is a stillness and a sanctuary to which you can retreat at any time and be yourself just as I can. Few people have that capacity, yet everyone could have it." This again reminds me of people who are real musicians, who are masters of what they do, and rock stars. Some of them always want approval from others, but some are separate from that. They do their own thing. Bob Dylan would be one of those. Keith Richards might be one of those. They follow their own inner voice, and they're kind of surprised that everybody else is so excited about them. And they can retreat into themselves, into their sanctuary. We all need this. We all need this inner sanctuary we can retreat to. When you know yourself well, there's a stillness inside of you. When you don't know yourself, you're constantly seeking, where am I? Where am I? In everyone, you're looking for yourself. There is a power in knowing who you are, right? Let's look at, we're almost done, so we're going to just go ahead and finish. Not all people are clever, said Kamala. It has nothing to do with that, Kamala, said Siddhartha. It's not cleverness. Kamaswami is just as clever as I am, and yet he has no sanctuary inside of him. Others have it who are only children in understanding. Most people, Kamala, are like a falling leaf that drifts and turns in the air and flutters and falls to the ground. But a few others are like stars, which travel one defined path. No wind reaches them. The stars are above the wind, right? No wind reaches them. They have within themselves their guide and path. What does Siddhartha have with him? His inner voice. Among all the wise men, of whom I knew many, there was one who was perfect in this respect. I can never forget him. He is Gautama, the illustrious one who preaches this gospel. Gautama the Buddha. And gospel, this is a Christian word. We call Jesus' words the gospel. Thousands of young men hear his teachings every day and follow his instructions every hour. But they are all falling leaves. They aren't him. They have not the wisdom and guide, and they don't have the wisdom and guide within themselves. They have to look to the Buddha. Kamala looked at him and smiled. You are talking about him again, she said. Again you have samana thoughts. Siddhartha was silent and they played the game of love. One of the 30 or 40 different games which Kamala knew. She knows a lot. Her body was as supple as a jaguar. So now we see what supple is. A jaguar is, you see the muscles moving under, but it kind of it's not stiff. She was as supple as a jaguar and a hunter's bow. The hunter's bow can bend. Whoever learned about love from her learned many pleasures, many secrets. She played with Siddhartha for a long time, repulsed him, overwhelmed him, conquered him, rejoiced at her mastery, until he was overcome and lay exhausted at her side. The courtesan bent over him and looked long at his face, into his eyes that had grown tired. You are the best lover that I have had, she said thoughtfully. You are stronger than others, more supple, more willing. You have learned my art well, Siddhartha. Some day when I am older, I will have a child by you. And yet, my dear, you have remained a Samana. You do not really love me. You love nobody. Is that not true? Isn't that sad? Maybe, said Siddhartha wearily. So when it says, notice in books, they give you hints at things. So we already know he's exhausted from their love, they're making love. But it also said she looked into his eyes that have grown tired. This is a key. Hesse is using this to point to something. Siddhartha is getting tired of this life, even the pleasure he has with Kamala. And it says here, maybe, Siddhartha says wearily. Maybe, Siddhartha said wearily, I am like you. You cannot love either. Otherwise, how can you practice love as an art? Interesting. You can't love because you practice it as an art. You can only practice it as an art when you're separate from it. Perhaps people like us cannot love. Ordinary people can. That is their secret. I would rather be an ordinary person who can love. That's what I've learned from India. That is better. Yeah. So here we are at the end of chapter 6. I hope you enjoyed it. Do me a favor, like and subscribe, hit the bell icon, and comment. It really helps me in making videos because it lets people see my videos. Share it with one other person who's learning English. And then go to RJK English on Facebook and let's talk. I've shown you the page. Here it is. Just go and you can talk to me there. All right. See you next time.